Hi, everyone. I'm McKenna. I'm the owner of Murder by the Book in Houston, Texas. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We have another really fun panel and great list of authors joining us tonight from Agora and Polis Books. And we're actually going to be joined by the publisher of Polis Books, Jason Pinter, who's going to be interviewing them. So I'm really looking forward to this. They're going to have the discussion. I'm going to be off the camera, just watching and listening. And I'll be back on to moderate questions. So don't be shy. Put questions in the comments on live chat if you're watching on YouTube, or here on Facebook. If you want to put them just in the comments, I'll get to them in a little bit. I will mention that, oh goodness, it's this Saturday already, is Independent Bookstore Day, and we already have our special limited edition tote bags in stock. We're also going to be doing several promotions that day. There's a promotion with Libro FM for free audiobooks if you shop at an independent bookstore. There's also, we're doing a free Murder by the Book Poison mug with a $100 purchase. And then we have some of the really cool limited edition gear. We have the Baby Yoda Read onesies. We have the Blackwing pencils that say, "I love indie bookstores," signed Nigella Lawson books, a special Stephen King short story collection. Some really cool things. So make sure to check out our website, Instagram, Facebook on Independent Bookstore Day for all of that merchandise. We're also going to be hosting all of the Mystery Writers of America Best Novel Edgar nominees at 1 o'clock. They're going to be joining us from all over the world, and that's going to be a pretty special event. All right, so I think that's enough about what's coming up at the store. I think we have 6 or 7 other virtual events this week, so make sure to check our event calendar so that you don't miss any of your favorite authors. I'm going to go ahead and start with Jonas Floor. Let's see. Hi, Jana. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and introduce you. So Jonas Floor was born in the former Soviet Union and moved to the Midwest in the early 1990s. She has a master's degree in writing and publishing from DePaul University and has been published in many literary magazines. She and her husband, saxophonist for jazz rock fusion band Marbin, recently relocated from Chicago to Milwaukee, where besides writing, she's raising her newborn daughter. Well, now maybe 2. So she's here tonight to talk with us about her brand new book, At the End of the World, Turn Left. I can't wait to hear about it. Next up, we have Johnny Shaw. Hi, Johnny.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Johnny was born and raised on the Calexico-Mexicali border in the stifling heat of the California desert. Johnny has been nominated for an Anthony Award 3 times, winning for Best Paperback Original in 2013 for the comedic adventure novel Big Maria. He's been shortlisted for a number of awards and has won the Spotted Owl Award twice. His short fiction has appeared in Thuglet, Plots with Guns, Crime Factory, Shotgun Honey, and numerous anthologies. And he's here tonight to talk about The Southland. Also looking forward to hearing about that. Our last author is Joe Clifford. Hi, Joe.
How are you?
Well, thank you. Thanks for being here. Joe Clifford is the author of 5 novels in his best-selling Anthony Award-nominated J. Porter series, as well as the acclaimed addiction memoir Junkie Love. He lives in the Bay Area with his wife and 2 sons, and his latest book that he'll be talking about tonight is The Lake House. Now, last but not least, we do have another author, but tonight he's serving the purpose of publisher. Hi, Jason. Hi. All right, Jason Pinter is the best-selling author.
A wave isn't good enough. You're right.
It's okay. That's fine. Is the best-selling author of 8 novels for adults. His books have over 1 million copies in print worldwide. He's been nominated for numerous awards, including the Thriller Award, Strand Critics Award, Barry Award, and Shamus Award, and The Mark was optioned to be a feature film. Pinter is the founder of Polis Books, an independent press, and was honored by Publishers Weekly's Star Watch, which recognizes young publishing professionals who have distinguished themselves as future leaders of the industry. He lives in New Jersey with his wife and their 2 daughters, and just as a side note, his most recent book is Stranger at the Door, which is his second Rachel Marin thriller. So I'm going to go away. That was a lot to say, and leave you guys to it, and be back on in a little bit for questions. So have fun.
Thanks, McKenna. Okay, cool. Thank you for everyone for being here for this. First of all, I just want to give a quick thank you to McKenna Jordan, to John McDougall, to Murder by the Book for hosting not just these events, but all these events over the past year plus. This has been a pretty difficult time for a lot of independent bookstores. A lot of them have either been closed or been very limited. And for stores like Murder by the Book to have all these virtual events and allow readers who might not ordinarily be able to see these events, see them virtually, is really incredible. And the first thing I would say is that if you are watching this event now live, or if you're going to watch this event at some point, either on Facebook or YouTube or on a podcast, please support Murder by the Book and buy these authors' books, buy other authors' books, buy the entire store, because these bookstores survive because of readers like you. So thank you for joining us. Now, first of all, I want to thank you all for being here. Joe and Johnny, I feel like I've sort of known you both for a little while. We've met at various conferences. We've worked together. Jana, this is your debut novel, which is absolutely fantastic. So I guess first off, I want to ask each of you, because one of the things I love about this is that each of these books are so different. They can be sort of fit under the umbrella of crime fiction and its various subgenres, but they're all so different. So let's start with Jana, since it's your debut. Tell us about At the End of the World Turn Left, and tell us what your inspiration was for it.
First of all, it's nice to meet you finally. I don't think
seriously.
Met you. So, yay. So my book is a literary mystery set in River West about two Russian immigrant sisters who get caught up in their father's questionable past, let's say. One sister is an artist, and the other one is a linguist who lives in Israel, and she returns to Milwaukee to find Anna, the artist, when she goes missing. It's the basic summary. And, the inspiration. Well, the ideas and themes are things I've thought about basically my whole life, because I'm also an immigrant, and I came here when I was 5, and I've always wondered and questioned this idea of home and what it really means, because being kind of in between America and the former Soviet Union and not really finding a place where I fit in either category. So I wanted to explore these ideas in the book while also getting the characters likable and have people want to read about them.
And how much of yourself would you say is in this book? Obviously, they're the two sisters. Are they entirely fictional? Are there pieces of yourself that are in each of them or either one of them?
It's very autobiographical in terms of the characters, not the plot at all. Chantal helped me so much with the plot. She's such a good editor. When I first
she absolutely is.
It was very literary, very slow, not a lot of crime happening, and she kept telling me we need to have some crime. It's a crime publisher, so we need to work on that a little bit. But so I would say Anna came from. She's the younger sister, very much based on myself around her age at 19, and I was living in River West in Milwaukee and wanting to be an artist, and it was not something my parents were supportive of at all, and so I just found myself struggling with fitting into my family as well as the art world, and so that part is kind of autobiographical, and Masha is kind of the only completely made up character. That's the older sister, and then a lot of the family members are based off my family members, so that's why they feel like real people, which is nice, but I don't know if they're gonna like that. We'll see.
Johnny, The Southland. You've written a number of critically acclaimed books, award-nominated books. The Jimmy Feeder fiasco, Big Maria, Dove Season. The Southland is a pretty big departure for you. So, what drove you? What inspired this book and the characters? What inspired you to write it?
Well, I mean, some of it was personal ambition, and some of it was just, I don't know. I mean, why do we write? I write to kind of just so that the story is no longer in my head until I kind of exercise it out. It's going to just kind of roll in there. And the Southland is it's from the point of view of 3 Mexican immigrants or undocumented or unauthorized immigrants in Los Angeles. So the crime, pretty much everything I've written has been about underdogs. I'm a working class crime writer. I don't really write about any other class. And I wanted to kind of explore writing about LA because I had lived there for a dozen years. And like I've been out of the United States for about 3 years now, and trying to look back at the United States, looking for that underdog, I couldn't think of a better place for a crime story than you look for the most powerless people. And so I found it intriguing. It kind of grew out of a much simpler story and it got much bigger. So, and some of it was, I didn't want to be funny anymore. I mean, that was quite simply, I wanted to write a serious novel, and I had used humor, not as a crutch. I wanted to play with tone. I wanted to write something just for myself to see if the story could carry it rather than just my voice carrying it, which is kind of much louder in the previous books.
Now, obviously, you're writing a book from the perspective, like you said, 3 Mexican immigrants, undocumented immigrants. Obviously, the book sort of is coming out during one of the a time when both in terms of the publishing industry, both in terms of diversity itself, how important it is to tell these kind of stories. How did you get? Obviously, you yourself are not a Mexican immigrant. How were you able to sort of get that authenticity and make sure that you told these stories the way it deserved to be told? Because it's so, I feel like the responsibility to get that story right is more important now probably than ever, especially if you're not.
I mean, I've been.
So how do you make sure you get that right?
I've been writing about the border for a decade, and even longer than that in terms of nonfiction. And when I was writing for film, I took the responsibility very seriously. I approached it first, again, as a book about class, but I'm not going to pretend like I'm not a white guy writing about almost entirely Mexican, let's say Latinx people, but primarily Mexican because of the world that the story is set in. I don't personally follow publishing, so I don't think of it that way. I think of it creatively in terms of getting something right. I could, I wrote that book in Zagreb. I was completely removed from publishing. I don't really follow it that much. So I was thinking of it as a creative process. It's not on contract. I write a book to see if I can pull it off. And it seemed like it was an ambition, but I didn't take it lightly. And the other LA, there's very few LA fiction that was handling, this part of LA. There's so many LA books that are about Hollywood, about different classes. And so what Steph Cha or Ivy Pachoda or certain authors are doing was just much more interesting. And honestly, part of it's just ego or hubris. I thought I could pull it off, and I wanted to see if I could,
I think sometimes you need a little bit of ego and hubris as a writer to sort of write the kind of book that you want to write, to think that you can pull off a book that may be difficult, but to think that you can pull it off. So, and you guys all did it magnificently. I do also want to point out that, Johnny, I think it's 2 a.m. where you are. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm in Croatia. I'm in Croatia right now.
So Johnny might have caffeine coursing through his veins right now.
Oh, no. It's 2 a.m. I'm literally in bed. I went to sleep. I woke up. I turned on my computer. I can hear it in my voice. It's like about an octave deeper than it usually is. So,
but by the time we finish this, it's gonna be time for Johnny to wake up. So, so Joe, Joe, I'll say that Joe is sort of an author that I've known through the community for a long time. We always sort of run into each other at conferences. I've always been sort of a fan, especially of the Jay Porter novels. You wrote the Jay Porter series. You wrote a memoir, Junkie Love. You've written a few other books. Where did the inspiration for The Lake House come from? Because I do think, having read a lot of your work, that it is also very much a departure in that. I feel like, obviously, Jonas is a debut, but both Johnny and Joe, you seem like these books are very much sort of departures from what you've done previously. So Joe, where did the idea for The Lake House come from?
Yeah, it's a departure. I should have. I'm sorry for being elate. I could ask these questions before, but like language, am I allowed to like use regular language? Do I have to curb, make sure I don't swear and that kind of thing? I don't
know. I feel like I have to ask.
Okay.
Language is allowed. It's fine. It's
okay,
fine.
good. All right.
Go to town.
Start talking.
I feel like if you're reading these authors' books, you're probably not going to get offended by a 4-letter word. So at the risk of being kicked out of Murder by the Book.
Yeah, you'd be surprised, man.
Yeah, I mean, if you get one like piece of criticism like via hate mail more than anything, it's please stop using that salty language. Anyway, where I got the idea from? Graduating class of 1988, Berlin High, where I grew up, Berlin, Connecticut. We are the exact geographical center of Connecticut, which I know doesn't seem like a big deal to you, but it's a big deal to the town of Berlin, and it's commemorated next to the town Dairy Queen with a plaque, the exact geographical center of Connecticut. It's very Connecticut is a very peculiar sort of spot just because of its politics. You have these pockets of like really blue blood sort of liberal, and then you have other pockets where they think they're sort of like in the deep south, and like you'll see memes all over. It's just a fascinating place to set a book. These different types of ideologies and beliefs, and I wanted to bring a love story against that sort of waspish, uptight, but yet with this reckless sort of enclave where anything can happen, and put those two worlds together. It's very different than the stuff I did in the Jay Porter books. But the inspiration definitely came from my graduating class. I was not very popular in high school, shocker. I didn't get along with many people. And, through Facebook and social media, I've reconnected with a lot of these people. So what I did for this book was I literally took classmates' names and I used them. The Sheriff Dwayne Sobczak is based on Dwayne Sobczak, and I got every permission and stuff in writing, so we're not gonna get sued, don't worry. But I like the idea of picturing these people that I've now taken from, that I knew 30-something years ago, or however old I am now, and I took them and I put them in these roles. So Dwayne's the sheriff, and I have just various people that I know in these roles, and then I let sort of this soap opera unfold. I'm a big fan of soap operas. Guiding Light being the chief one of those, we are sadly for a number of years. And I like the thing with soap operas, how you get sucked into everybody's individual drama. So very different than Jay Porter stuff. Johnny wants to be more serious. I'd love to be more. I'd love to be funnier. Because you read Johnny and that's great, but man, I'd love to make people laugh like that. I tend to write a little more somber, a little more serious, sort of. As one critic called it, unrelentingly bleak. But Lake House, I want
that should be on the cover, man.
That also got.
So you're like
that novel.
Batman versus Superman in crime writing.
That was an anthology. That was Give Up the Dead. I won't. I can tell you, Publishers Weekly called Unrelentingly Bleak. And so I don't know. I don't know. I don't think you're not
That's
gonna
like an epitaph.
I got a letter the other day from somebody, stranger, like, listen, I just read The Lake House, and I just got to tell you how funny I found that book and how much I appreciate all the sarcasm. I'm like, thank you. Like, it's layered with sarcasm. It's not obvious. You have to look for it, and it's a certain kind of dark humor, but it is definitely there. So for a long roundabout answer, I drew my inspiration from my hometown of Berlin, Connecticut, and soap operas. I just had some really good coffee, too. I'm not going to lie. I drink Death Wish coffee, which is the world's strongest brew. And it really is fantastic. But if I start talking too fast, please tell me to slow down. I also have some minor brain damage from the drugs. Anyway, that's the answer. I'm looking at Jason. I feel like I'm very well. Like I'm in class. I feel like I'm in class and I've disappointed the professor. Now he's disappeared. Yeah. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Joe.
It's been a long time.
And I just want to say to Jana that I'm 80% of the way through your book. I didn't finish it in time.
What do you think so far?
No spoilers with what happens with Anastasia. It's a blast, and it has a great balance of tone in terms of both humor, and I think you have a great balance of tone in there. It's an interesting world to be in.
I tried to add humor because when I read a book that doesn't have a lot of it, I just get really depressed. So
yeah,
you gotta have some humor in there.
I mean, before I was here, like I was in Portland, so the whole world of like train, train hoppers and stuff. That River West. I mean, I spent a little time in Milwaukee.
Portland is very like, well, it used to be very River West. Now it's kind of more like Starbucks, Seattle.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're reading it. Sorry, my toddler is crying in the background.
Am I wrong? It officially comes out tomorrow, right?
Yeah, tomorrow. Yay!
Congratulations! That's amazing. That's amazing.
I'm pretty excited. It's my first event.
This is your first event?
Yes.
Oh, trial by fire.
That's why I didn't know if my mic was working for a bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry you had to do it with Joe. No, that was a joke. That was.
No, that's fair.
It's weird to have a book come out when there's not a lot of live events, So we'll see how it goes. Virtual stuff.
Yeah, it's nice to see that stuff is like kind of changing. I mean, not here, but it's
it's cheaper.
Yeah.
You can drink from home when you do your virtual events, save some money.
Yeah.
So that helps.
Well, I mean, for me, like it's the only kind of events I can do. So it actually.
Why are you in Croatia, by the way?
It's a long story. I'm not going to go into it. But my wife and I travel a lot, and we've been we live nomadically to a certain degree. So I wouldn't recommend traveling internationally. Last year was not probably the best time.
I did that. It was tough.
Yeah, we were in 3 different countries, and so although I have to say, like being in. We flew out of Heathrow at one point, which is a massive airport. I think it's 5 terminals, maybe 6 terminals, and only 2 were open. There were only 2 of them were open. And you could have just ran. It was like a zombie movie. It was depressing, but kind of amazing to be in this giant space that was just empty. I mean, you felt completely safe. You couldn't even find people. It was just like. But yeah, I do not. I recommend Croatia. I love Croatia. I spent a lot of time in Croatia and Spain.
I've wanted to go there forever. It's so pretty. I mean,
we're on the Dalmatian coast right now. It's stupid. Our place is. I mean, I can see islands from my window. I mean, it's stupid. It's ridiculous.
That sounds awesome.
I mean, not now. My wife's asleep in the other room. If she comes in here, then then it's done. We're done. Like that means I'm busted. Like I was too loud. So
you gotta go outside. You don't have a balcony?
Oh no, that would be terrible here. Yeah, it's a little loud. Anyway, I think you're mute. I can't hear you, Jason.
Yeah, Jason seems to be muted.
Yeah. Is that better?
This is the downside of virtual
Okay,
events.
good. Yeah. I wanted to say, my Wi-Fi has been sort of like very spotty, so if I go in and out, it's not that I'm like going to get a snack or something. It's just I'm trying to get this back connected. So I want to go on to setting. Actually, Johnny, you're talking about Croatia, but each of your books has such a very defined setting. So I want to ask, each of you. I'll start off with Joe. What was it about the setting of the lake house that did you feel that book had to be set there? Why was the lake house set where it was?
Well, that's a quick 2-parter. One is every time about international travel, I feel I should have mentioned this entire book. First draft was written on the high-speed trains of Italy when I was doing a tour for Junkie Love, and it really did seep into the book. I'm not sure how it did seep into the book, or if I just want to say that I was on a high-speed train in Italy on a book tour. But I feel like it did get in there. Something about the nomadic, and you're moving, and you get that space in the brain. The artistic, creative process. The longer answer, the more thorough answer is all my books are based on Berlin. All the J. Porter books, all the geography, even though I set them in New Hampshire, I use town landmarks. I use the town Dairy Queen. That's the running joke that I always sneak into every books. When I went back to Berlin, they gave me a tour of the town Dairy Queen, which is the world's smallest Dairy Queen. It lasted about 3 minutes, but it was pretty cool. And so this time I wanted to actually move to Connecticut and actually talk about Connecticut instead of, I'm sort of circling the wagon. And then I've written a book since then, but I actually set it in Berlin, Connecticut. But I just was getting closer and closer. But for all those reasons I mentioned before, the landscape of Connecticut's, that's where I grew up, and all the good and all the bad. And the older you get, I think you find yourself drawn to these formative places, these formative years. So it's very easy for me. I've lived on the West Coast most of my life, in the Bay Area, but almost everything I write is set on the East Coast. I'm very much a West Coast guy, but if a civil war were to break out between the left and right coast, I'd have to fight for the East Coast. Like, in my blood, I'm high strung, I'm neurotic. I've got all those like just East Coast tendencies, and there's something.
How do you
about,
end up as a writer?
My favorite book is Catcher in the Rye. My favorite team is the Yankees. My favorite movie is Rocky. I am a walking, talking cliche. But so there are differences between the coasts and the way people carry themselves, and I feel like the Lake House captures some of that. That Puritan stiff upper lip. You take your hits, and you'll be paid in the afterlife sort of edict that runs through much of the region.
So, Johnny, one of the things that you mentioned before, which I found really interesting, is that you were talking about Los Angeles, and specifically you mentioned Steph Cha, you mentioned Ivy Pachota, and one of the things I love about this sort of a crop of writers writing about LA is that you're really seeing a different part of LA than you're used to. You're not seeing the sort of like the glitz and glamour, but you're seeing sort of the people on the fringes, the people sort of like you said, sort of the underdogs. So, what was it about this story that had to be sort of set in LA? Did you consider any other possibilities, or was this just an LA story that had to be told?
It was always set. Sometimes I probably considered like Phoenix or some of the other, non-border towns. Like, I didn't want it to be in San Diego. I didn't want it to be so close. I wanted it to be a little removed. I lived in LA for 12 years. And I never see, that's the thing is, to me, that is LA. I don't see that as the fringe. I see the fringe as people with money. There's only a finite number of people with money in LA. Most people in LA are either trying to make ends meet because it's expensive, working regular jobs. That I think the way it's portrayed is that, and the way the entire United States is portrayed as a place that is far more well off than it is, that is not religious, that are all these things. I don't know how you can write. I'm not religious at all. But I don't know how you could write about the United States and not touch on religion. And I think everyone kind of avoids that. And I understand why. I get it. But it's inherently a part of the American experience. So when I look at LA, this isn't the fringe of LA. It's the fringe in fiction, but no, it's the only stories that I see. LA is a tough place to live that pretends like it's laid back and easy, and and I lived in Venice for a lot of the time, which is great and cool, but that is a messed up place. I almost said it there, but that just complicated it too much. That's a fascinating place. More stories in Venice. I don't know what it's like. Now it's a lot different than a million years ago when I lived there. But
as a reader, sort of one of the things that appeals to me is sort of when you read about, when I say fringe, I sort of mean, I think I meant more in terms of what you read.
I didn't mean that as like I didn't mean that.
No. But one of the things that I enjoy as a reader is sort of finding books or authors that tell you about a city that you may know very well through film or through other books, and they're telling you about an aspect of that city that you don't see very often. Rob Hart, for example, I was fortunate enough to publish his Dash McKenna series, and the first book set in characters set in Staten Island. And other than I think maybe like one or two authors, like people in contemporary fiction are not really writing about Staten Island. People are not writing about the Bronx. There's a million books about set in Brooklyn, but there's big parts of New York that are ignored because people want to talk about Fifth Avenue. People want to talk about Brooklyn. And that's what I loved about that. Or Alex Agora, who writes about a side of Miami that is not, it's not the glitz and glamour. It's not, he's not writing about Will Smith's Miami. So that's sort of what appeals to me when writers write about areas that you think are well known, but they show you a different side of that. John, I was sort of asking about location and how important was it? I'll let to see, but how important was it that your book was set where it was? I know that obviously Wisconsin's very important to you. Why was your book set where it was, and did you ever consider another setting for it?
It's very important because I really wanted to write about this neighborhood and that specific time period, because even when I was living there, I thought it was the weirdest place I'd ever been. And a lot of people that have read the early ARC book were like, did you make up this place? No, it's there. It's still there. I just thought it was such an interesting and unique subculture that had like just all sorts of people in it. It was the first place I ever felt, I don't know, like any sort of belonging, I guess. And, very artistic, very downtrodden, a lot of crime. There's that stuff for sure, but also very like welcoming community feeling. Like you just walk around, you'll run into 5 people in 10 minutes, which I'd never had that. So I thought that was really cool. Also, they're like really anti-technology. Like nobody had cell phones. You'd have to like have a bat signal to find somebody, which I thought was really interesting for a setting. And I just was thinking how that would be such a cool place for a crime story, because you just have like all these elements that could really work well together, like the lack of technology and all the weird subcultures, because it would just be a unique setting for a crime story. And you don't see Milwaukee in crime fiction too often. I know Nick Petrie does Milwaukee, but other than that, it's not usually where you go to. And also, Milwaukee was important for the Russian immigrant angle, because there are Russian immigrants here, but very small percentage compared to other places, so it doesn't really feel the same. Like if you're Russian and you move to Brighton Beach, you're basically living the same lifestyle in Brighton Beach that you did in the Soviet Union, because you're just surrounded by Russians. But here, it's more like you have to kind of blend into the American culture a lot more than if you were somewhere else with a lot more Russians. So I just thought it'd be interesting in terms of identity reasons, like if you don't fit into any of these cultures, but you kind of fit a little bit in each one. It's an interesting place to be character-wise.
How did your own sort of immigration experience influence your characters? Because obviously, the parent, in your book, the parents have essentially chosen for them that they're going to be immigrants. And I want to contrast that sort of with Johnny's book, where they're forced to immigrate due to necessity. So what part of your own immigration experience do you see that in these characters or in this book, your own experience?
Well, the immigration stuff was very close to what happened, because I wanted to write about the specific immigration story we had. I didn't feel like it needed to be changed because it was already interesting enough. And I also wanted to kind of save those histories of my family in a book. My grandparents all survived the Holocaust, and they went through a lot to get here. And I was like, someone needs to write this stuff down and just keep it. So part of why I didn't change details was because I really wanted to keep those histories alive in this book. I got sidetracked. What was the question?
Well, just, how much of your own experience, obviously, as an immigrant yourself.
Very similar. I would say it's like almost very, like it's very similar autobiographical history. Not the current setting and plot and stuff, but everything in terms of getting there. And I had the same hometown, and the grandparents are basically my grandparents. Pretty much had the same exact conversations. But I wanted I kept them that way because I wanted to keep it like alive, basically. Mm-hmm.
And I'm as a Jew too, sort of a lot of this stuff sort of resonated too. Like, I was bar mitzvahed on in Israel. My sister went on birthright, so a lot of this stuff was sort of interesting to read about. Johnny, obviously, the immigration experience is sort of very different in your book, and these characters are essentially forced to do that. So, I sort of touch on this a little bit, but you talk about the importance of writing the story authentically, and that is hugely important. So how did you go about doing that? What were sort of the steps that you took to, whether it was research or whether it was speaking to people? How do you make sure that when you were writing about this immigration experience that you got this right?
I mean, I think one of the hardest things when writing about, I mean, even one's own culture, but definitely somebody else's culture, is that if you only have, originally it was a single character, it was done through the point of view of a single character. But the problem is then it can appear that you're kind of looking at this entire diaspora monolithically as this is the representative of this entire group. So I split it into three characters so I could show three different experiences from three different parts of Mexico, from three different backgrounds, because obviously Mexico itself is incredibly diverse culturally. There's not one, I mean, I guess there is nationally a concept of Mexican culture, but it's very specific to region. I know much more of Sonoran Desert and the area where I grew up. I know much more about that. So I had to research a lot more about further south, which is where much more of the immigrants are coming from the South. And right now, also South America. And I considered doing South America, but I wanted to keep it kind of, for me, that would have been, I'm just increasing the level of difficulty, because I was also writing from a woman's point of view, or from women's point of view for the first time. I was doing a lot of for the first time. And it was like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Why don't you just write your dumb stories? Why don't you write your dick jokes and just get another check? Like, it wasn't the smartest thing I've ever written. It's one of the best things I've written. I'm really proud of the book, but it was like, if I followed publishing, it was a dumb idea. And the book turned out good. That's not an indictment of the book. It was a dumb book to write. That's all I'm going to say.
So, Joe, I want to sort of, obviously, I would sort of categorize your book as sort of like definitely in the domestic suspense genre. And, that's such a rich ground right now. And I think one of the things that appealed to me about this book and about you was that it seemed so different from your previous books. So what were sort of your influences for sort of this departure? Was it other books that you'd read, stories that you wanted to tell? What made you just, when you wanted to sort of switch gears from the J. Porter series, what made you decide to sort of switch to this one?
Well, first, let me, I do this a lot, I'm sorry. I very tangential thinking. I get off bouncing, but what Johnny just said really resonated because, Johnny, I'm very proud of this book. I love this, The Lake House. When I wrote it, I thought, well, here it is, Looking back, it was a very stupid decision. And again, it's not an indictment of the book, because I love the book. I really do. And I assume you do too, because you're publishing it. But it has been met with, the response I get from The Lake House is strange. And I get a lot of people, love it and they read my work. But there's been a lot of people who are not happy with it. And I think part of the reason is because such a departure. You get, as an author, an actor, any kind of artist, you get put in these roles and people like to see you in those roles. And when you move out of those roles, it shakes them a little bit. And I certainly got that reaction to this book, which is kind of heartbreaking, because every book you put out, you think you put out the best book. And I love The Lake House. When I wrote it, I wrote a 21-day dash, and I was really, really excited. And looking back now.
You say 21-day dash?
Yeah.
You say 21-day dash?
21 day. I wrote the whole book in 21 days. Yeah.
Did you edit it after?
Oh yeah, obviously. Yeah. Then
That's like one of those like Stephen King stories. Like Stephen King wrote The Running Man in like 3 nights or something like that.
If I said I wrote 10,000 words in 21 days, I'd be stoked. And
I write all my books in under a month now. The first draft, but you got to mind you, like, they're horrible books. Like,
goodness.
They're dead on page.
Well, I know they're horrible.
I typed the end after 21 days. Anyway, I follow publishing, unlike Johnny, and which kind of, it makes my decision even dumber, because I just didn't. I did, clearly there's a disconnect, and I'm not sure where it happened. But yes, they are based on the book. My favorite writer right now is Mary Kubica, who I just absolutely adore. Mary Kubica. She writes. Yeah. I think she's I think The Good Girl is every bit as good as Gone Girl. And I know she gets plenty of acclaim, and she doesn't need my endorsing her, but I think she's just amazing. Everything she does, she's just a writer. When she writes a book, I put down everything and I read it. And the weird thing is this isn't great to admit, but up until maybe 10 years ago, I didn't read many female authors. In the last 10 years, I don't read anything but female authors. That's all I read. It's very rare if I read. I'm reading Josh Moore's new Model Citizen. But it's the first time I think I've read a book by a man in at least about 8 years, because all I read is Mary Kupka, Wendy Walker, Jennifer Hillier. These are the writers. The domestic psychological thriller, for me, women are just doing something that men aren't. And it's fascinating to watch, and I want to do it, and I want to be a part of it. I go to these conferences and I see them all sitting together, and I want to be part. Like Taylor Swift has a crew, right? I want to be adopted, like as an honorary member of the crew, to hang around with Wendy Walker and Jennifer, because I'm enamored by the way they can wrench emotion, and in a way that just I haven't seen done before. So I'm devouring these books, Jar of Hearts, and we all know that this we work around the same circle.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to write a book very much like Jess Laurie and everybody else is doing these days. And maybe I went too far trying to punch outside of my weight class. My latest book, the one you're putting out soon, The Shadow People, I go back to my wheelhouse. I mean, it's back to the world I know well, reporters, sort of drugs and paranoia and that sort of thing. And I love that book too. I mean, nobody ever writes a book and puts it out and goes, that wasn't okay. But like, you put out the best you can, and you present it to the world, and like, here's my heart, please don't break it. And then you step back and you read the Goodreads reviews. Don't read your Goodreads.
Don't read. I do it all the time. At this point, Joe, come on. You've been around long enough.
I do it. No, there's no excuse. I do it. I'm an idiot, and I do it, and I read it, and then yeah, I know.
How do you not read it?
It's like that.
I'm sorry.
That's sort of The Simpsons with Sideshow Bob, where he steps on all the rakes over and over again. That's sort of like reading the Goodreads. You're just like stepping on a rake, it hits you in the face. Keep walking. Step on a rake, it hits you in the face. So just stop walking.
That's exactly what it is. Yep, that's what it is. Yeah.
So we're sort of coming up on the end of our time. So I want to final with one last question. Joe sort of answered my question because I know what his next book is. Joe's The Shadow People is coming out from Post later this summer. But beyond that, because that book is sort of in the very final stages, what are each of you working on next? I'll start with Jana.
I just this week finished a draft of a YA novel. It's a supernatural YA novel about these twins from Ukraine, and I think you might know about it, Jason. I had to rewrite it, I think, since Chantel talked to you about it. But so there's a girl, she works for her uncle engraving portraits into tombstones, and they start talking to her, and it leads her on this like fun adventure of discovering her past and like what really happened to her family who had died. That's based off a job that I had that I've just always wanted to write a book about. And then I also started another YA book, which is a modern retelling of Sleeping Beauty, but in 2046. So that's also been fun.
Oh, wow.
That's great.
That's very cool. Yeah, that's cool. Johnny, how about you?
I'm finishing up, almost done with a book. It'll probably be my last book in Mexico for a while, because I'll start following publishing soon. That'll be something. Maybe that'll be a hobby of mine. But it's from
that's a masochistic hobby.
But yeah, it's like reading reviews. It would be similar to reading reviews in my mind. I can't believe you read reviews. Anyway, it's from the point of view of a body disposal person in the cartels who gains a conscience and tries to make some things right. That was based around an idea of around a real person within the cartels, El Pozolero, it was almost when he got caught or when they arrested, like his defense was almost like, but I didn't kill anyone. And I actually kind of embraced that as like, if you live within that culture, there was this other kind of moral, these other moral kind of values that you could kind of rationalize in terms. And he was right. I mean, in a sense, that So anyway, that's that. And then when I finish that, I got a book that I want to set in 1980s, the Ceausescu, Romania, that I'm really hot for right now. I think I'm really, really I'm not a real premise guy, like a high concept. Like I said, my genre was always just a couple dumb guys with a really bad plan. That's the genre of books that I write. And so I usually start with character, place, and then I see what happens. This one is kind of coming fully formed, and I'm pretty excited about that.
Joe, you got Shadow People coming out in a few months. You want to tell people a little bit about that, and then maybe a glimpse of what you're working on after that?
Yeah, I mean, the Shadow People is about a paranoid schizophrenic who, has a bunch of conspiracy theories, and he throws darts in the dark, and he happens to hit upon a mark. And his childhood best friend, more of a straight-laced college student, gets drawn into a road trip with the deceased, equally schizophrenic grandfather. So it's a buddy picture. I'm happy with it. I did the proofs and I read it, and what you're reading, you feel pretty good. And I hope this one makes you some more money. I just started writing the sequel. People keep asking me to write a follow-up to Junkie Love, and I've been reticent to return to the world of memoir, but inspired by Josh Moore's brilliant Model Citizen, I decided to take a stab. I just need to know where to start and what the center, and I figured that out, where it'll focus on. So I'm working on that now. I have two other books that are also, waiting to go out and be shipped and shopped and represented and sold and all that stuff. Cool.
Well, I want to thank you all for coming. Turn it back to McKenna, and thank you, McKenna, for having us. Thank you, Murder by the Book, for having us. If you're watching this live, if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook or on any of your devices, please go to murderbooks.com, order a copy of these books from these amazing authors, order many more books, support writers, support independent bookstores, and thank you all. And now back to McKenna.
Thanks again, Jason. So I actually have the link in the comments. All of the books are right there. All you have to do is click and you can read more about them. We do have a couple questions. The first one we have is, what are you currently reading? And it's for everyone. So I'm going to call on people, otherwise it's awkward. So I'm just going to go in order of what it looks like for me. So Johnny, you're up. What have you read recently that you like?
I'm currently reading Jana's book. So that's like, I have the
good
best answer. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's really, it has a great sense of place. And like, I haven't finished it, so I don't know how it ends. And so it also is unpredictable because I don't know how it's going to end. And it really does have a great sense of place. Like you've captured River. I don't know River West, but I know places like River West. And it could have been a generic version of a real place, and it feels like a real place. So that would be my recommendation.
That's a good one.
It's all downhill from here, really. Like, he already stole the best idea. All right, Joe, you're up.
I just finished Her Last Breath, which is coming out, Hillary Davidson's latest, and as I mentioned, Josh Moore's Model Citizen, his recovery memoir, which is fantastic.
All right, if we're going clockwise, Jason's up next.
Okay, so because I'm a complete masochist also, I just started reading Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, which had been on my it'd been on my TBR pile for God knows how long, and I was like, you know what, now's the time. And it's brilliant and amazing and also scary because it is about a pandemic that kills 99% of the world's population.
Doesn't it make you feel better? Because 99% of the population, that's a lot more.
That is a lot more, yeah. So I'm only about like 100 pages into that, but it's absolutely fantastic right now. And it's sort of, I've read a lot of, I guess, what you call dystopian novels, and this sort of looks at the dystopian novel from a very different perspective, and sort of like in terms of hope, which is really interesting to me. And I wanted to give a shout out to an author who I discovered recently and I love, and she's technically what I guess you call YA, but if you like crime and just riveting books, then you need to read her. Her name is Courtney Summers. I listened to her book called Sadie on audiobook, and it's sort of a half mystery, half podcast about a young girl who goes off in search of the man who she believes killed her younger sister. And it's sort of half the book is told from Sadie's perspective, and half the book is told from a podcaster who is trying to find out what happened to Sadie because she's disappeared too. So I thought that book was absolutely brilliant. And then I just read her new one, which is called The Project, about a woman who goes to essentially try to save her sister from this kind of like Waco-esque cult. So Courtney Summers is absolutely fantastic. So recommend all that.
Sounds good.
Jana?
I wish I could say that I had read your guys' books and I had planned on it, and then I had no time, and now I'm sad. But I am going to read them one day. Because I have the digital ones, and I'm so bad at reading stuff digitally because my eyes always hurt by the end of the day. So the last book I just read was the third book in the series by Caroline Kepnes, You. I love those books.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
I think it was the third. Maybe it's the fourth. I don't know. There's a lot of them. But she's very good. I recommend that whole series. I just finished it like yesterday.
Yeah, those are great. Jason, I will say I wholeheartedly agree with you about Station 11. It's amazing how she just like sets up in the first chapter, this is what happened. And then I always tell people the book is about what is important after an event like that, and the love of literature and the love of music. And it's such a beautiful book. So wonderful. And Courtney Summers.
How do you retain humanity when humanity is sort of like on the brink? Like it's
Yeah, it's great. And again, Courtney Summers, also, if you want an unforgettable young heroine, Chris Whitaker's We Begin at the End is unbelievably good. Really, really good. So
I've heard really good things about that. I want to check that out. Unfortunately, with like a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, my pleasure reading time is like almost non-existent. So my pile of non-work reading is like growing exponentially by the day.
Well,
admittedly, I did it on audio.
Yeah.
He does have work.
I'll definitely. I've heard good things about that, so I'll pick that up.
Yeah, Duchess is really just an unforgettable character. Anyway, okay, another question. Same person. Thank you for providing us questions. What is your general writing process in terms of how you use the day? And I'm going to go in reverse order. So obviously with young children, Jana, I'm sure it's a challenge, but how does your writing day look?
Oh, it's so random because some days I will write like half the day or the whole day depending on the mood of my daughter, or if she is in daycare. She just started half days daycare, half the week. So I've gotten some more writing time from that, but it always would depend if the husband is around to like take her to the park for a few hours. I definitely don't write as much as I used to before the baby, that's for sure. So it's probably usually I'll get a few hours in the morning, and if I have time in the afternoon, I'll get another few hours in. Sometimes I'll go 2 weeks, I won't write one word though. So it just really depends.
Jason, before you answer this, will you also just give us a little brief moment about the Rachel Marin books?
Oh, it's funny. I always say I try to keep my writing work and my work with Polis and Agora as separate as possible. Unfortunately, it's not always possible because it's the same industry, but I do try to keep them as separate as possible. But so Stranger at the Door is the most recent book in the major Rachel Marin series. It's the second book. And the first one, Hideaway, came out last year. And the basic premise is Rachel Marin is a single mother of 2 young children. And at the beginning of Hideaway, a horrific event shatters her family, forces her to change her and her children's identities, and move to a small town where she essentially trains herself, both mind and body, to be both a weapon and a protector, because she needs to protect her children because society essentially let them and her down. And in the first book, essentially, she is befriended by a woman in her small town. And when that woman is murdered, even though Rachel sort of promised herself to lay low, to stay sort of underground to protect her family, she sees that this woman's death is about to be kind of chalked up as a suicide. And she realized that she can't let that happen. So she sort of starts to investigate on her own. But in doing so, sort of jeopardizes the sort of carefully constructed bubble that she's created for her family. And so Stranger at the Door is the second book in that series where she sort of like started to find a bit of peace after everything, but of course that peace is shattered very early on, and she realizes that she, isn't that sort of having a quiet life at this point isn't really possible.
Good job. And what does a writing day or editing day look like for you with two little ones running around?
It is similar to Jana's. It's, especially, my everything with sort of Polis and Agora comes first because I have a responsibility to my writers and to the company and to Chantel. And that takes up, the vast majority of my day. And the truth is, like, unfortunately, with the pandemic, we don't have childcare. So my work there, as soon as, like, if I can cram in 15, 20 minutes of writing, that's what I do. At the end of the day, I never go to bed with all my work done. It's just figuring out like what work I can abandon until tomorrow. So I try to cram in some writing here or there, but it's not as fast as it used to be before kids. But it comes, just not as, I don't think I could possibly write a book in 21 days like Joe without like a large amount of illegal substances.
And speaking of Joe, how do you do that? And what's your writing day look like?
A large amount of illegal substances. No, I'm very fortunate to do this full time through various circumstances, most of which involve my being hit by a bus. So I try to take that responsibility seriously, and I treat it like a job. And I get up and I write every day. And again, I'm very, very lucky. But yeah, I write. I tend to write in bursts. If you can't tell, I have a little bit of a kind of a manic-y sort of personality. And when I'm creating, it's mostly just to stay sane. So I write, when I'm not writing, it's like, who am I? What do I like? It's just too much existential stuff. It's stop. Like, so I just write to survive. But yeah, I write, I can write 6, 7, 8 hours a day. It's writing, working out, golfing, and hanging out with kids.
I'm jealous. 6, 7 hours a day. I haven't done
God.
that since before.
Yeah.
Sounds like a
I'm making myself sound like a dick now. I think I'm an asshole. Sorry.
It was bound to happen.
I was gonna say, if I disappeared for 6 hours in a day, I would find myself like unemployed and alone very, very quickly.
People would just think I was dead probably 6 hours and they couldn't reach me. No, it just wouldn't work.
All right, Johnny, you're up.
Well, I wrote my first 6 books all at the same bar. Like I was always a cafe, bar, kind of pub, go out, get out of the house. My wife is a painter, so we're always both at home. So I would always leave the house to work, so we each had our own space. So yeah, I didn't think that the pandemic would, like, I was like, oh, you just switch to the dining room table. And it did throw me off. It did, like, the sense of rhythm, I usually walk for half hour, 40 minutes before I start working. And that's my daydreaming time. And it kind of prepares me for it. So I've had to adjust a little bit, but yeah, that's like, particularly, I really like being in a cafe where I can't understand what anybody around me is saying. Being in like, my Spanish is almost too good when I'm in Spain, but like my Croatian is terrible. And it's, it's not Hungarian. It's not Hungarian. It's not like a language that's just like an eye chart. You can actually get your kind of head around like Hungarian or Croatian, and most Slavic languages. They're not, but not enough to hear a conversation. I can fake like I'm on the phone, like doing the like da 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 dobro, and but being in a cafe, and it feels they could be having the most inane, dumb conversations, and it just sounds great to me because it's all super European and so I can get a lot of, like, now I've started to kind of go to cafes a little more because the weather's nice enough to be outside. And so, but still, yeah, I write almost every day, and trying to get like some level of, I have pretty good discipline. So yeah, that's my process.
Awesome. Jason, as my last question, it's to you, since we did a March Agora and Polis night and we're doing one in May. It's going to be Monday, May 17th. We'll have Sung Woo and Andrea Johnston with us. What do you guys have coming out you want to tell the world about? Yeah,
so we have Jana's book coming out imminently. We have A book called While Nobody Is Watching by an author named Michelle Dunn comes out in May. And what I love about this book is that it's about a former infantry soldier in the Irish Army who's suffering from PTSD, and the author herself, Michelle Dunn, was a former soldier in the Irish Army. So she has an absolutely fascinating background. She writes about Ireland and the Irish Army and the experience of that with a real authenticity. And just to me, just the background was absolutely incredible. Then we have a book called Sirens of Memory by Pooja Guha, coming out in June, about a woman who fled her husband during the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. She's a Kuwaiti woman. To free herself, and then 25 years later finds out that her husband, who she assumed had died during the invasion, is actually still alive. So it's this incredible sort of thriller suspense from an author who knows that conflict firsthand. We have an incredible debut novel called Walking Through Needles by Heather Levy. This is a book that I absolutely love because it's sort of a very sort of dark, sort of Gillian Flynn, Megan Abbott dark look at sex and violence and desire and mystery. And it's the kind of book that really sort of like crawls under your skin and sticks with you. And I think that's going to get a lot of people talking. We have Last Seen by Kent Harrington. I know you guys you just had an event with Kent and Gary Phillips. Yep. We published Gary's Matthew Henson and the Ice Temple of Harlem late last year. This is Kent's second book in the Michael Higgins series about a San Francisco police detective. And Kent is sort of like the mystery writer's mystery writer. Everyone who's read him absolutely loves him. In July, we got a new book from Joe here. He probably wrote in a day and a half. No, I'm kidding. I'm so excited. Like, I was so happy when we brought Joe on board. And I love this book. I think it's gonna be absolutely great. And so we have an incredible summer, and then we have a really amazing fall. And we'll sort of like talk about the fall as it comes up. We have new books from J.D. Rhodes. We have new book from James Quealy, from Tori Eldridge, from Andrea Johnson. Her new book's coming out later this year, and you're ever on for Poetic Justice. So I love what we're doing in terms of the sort of murderer's row of talent that we have, the diversity in terms of the authors, the stories, the genres and subgenres. Even right, every one of these books from these authors tonight is so different. And that's what I love about my job is that even though we publish a lot of crime, almost every book we publish is so different from everything else we publish. And that's sort of what I love about this genre, that it really encompasses everything about sort of society. And some of these books are really serious. Some of these books are just pure entertainment. And they're sort of, this is my wheelhouse. I love it.
Excellent. Well, we've already talked many times about how much we like what you guys are doing and the diversity and the variety of the books you're publishing. So keep up the good work. I'm going to need you to email me Walking Through Needles. That sounds wonderful.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah.
Excellent. Jana wants a copy as well. I'm sure that can be arranged.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
All right. So we'll let Johnny go back to sleep. And we're going to call it a night. Thank you all so much. As I said, the link is in the comments if you'd like to order anything. And if you're Agora Polis fans, we'll see you back in May. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Right.
Thanks for having us.